This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. Northern Heaven Frigid Star Iron. It's actually the Northern Heaven Frigid Star Iron. When Yunxiao discovered the material of the pillar, the shock in his heart was even greater than freezing his soul. He was so shocked that his eyes almost fell out of his head. What? This is the Northern Heaven Frigid Star Iron? You're not joking, are you? Yuan Gaohan was also startled and hurriedly came forward to check it carefully. He immediately sucked in a few breaths of cold air and felt that he couldn't stand steadily. He looked at these 7 towering stone pillars in a daze. They actually contained 9th-tier materials that were extremely difficult to find in the world. That was something that could be refined into a 9th-tier profound armament as long as it was the size of a fist. Yunxiao, on the other hand, calmed down very quickly. He stared at the stone pillar blankly, his eyes filled with complicated emotions. Although these 7 pillars were only the cores of the pillars, they were already extraordinary. They were even more luxurious than the heavenly shine K gold he had previously encountered. No wonder the natural treasures in the realm of heavenly martial arts are getting rarer and rarer. It's all because of these ancestors' unrestrained mining. Yuan Gaohan cursed a few times in a stern voice before revealing a look of wild joy. He surrounded the 7 pillars and examined them. If it wasn't for the cold air, he really wanted to go up and bite them. What do we do now? Yunxiao suddenly asked calmly, as if he was not moved by the 7 pillars at all. What do we do? Yuan Gaohan was stunned for a moment before he replied, we'll take one step at a time, but these 7 pillars must be taken away. His eyes were filled with greed and joy. Yunxiao sighed slightly and said, I also want this Northern Heaven Frigid Star Iron, but in lieu, these 7 pillars made of Northern Heaven Frigid Star Iron are clearly the seal formation eyes of this ancient pagoda. If it's destroyed, the great devil inside the ancient tower will come out. Only then did Yuan Gaohan's heart suddenly freeze. He also discovered the seriousness of the problem, and his expression became somewhat unsightly. He stared at the ancient pagoda in a daze. It was exuding wisps of coldine qi. The black demonic qi kept coming out of it, but it was blocked by the barrier formed by the 7 pillars and could not come out. As Yunxiao had said, if the 7 pillars were destroyed, not only would the demonic aura spread out, but God knew what else was inside the ancient tower. Something that could be so carefully imprisoned by the ancient almighty experts was definitely not simple. Yuan Gaohan licked his dry lips and nervously said, so many years have passed, even if there's something inside, it's already a lamp without oil, right? Yunxiao's heart stirred. He immediately thought of Dijia, who was in Mount Meru. He should also be an ancient demon or something like that. He had been suppressed for many years, and now he only had the strength of a martial grandmaster. The demon suppressed here might also be struggling on his last breath. Both of them were 9th-tier alchemists, and their resistance to such treasures was almost zero. They were both finding excuses for themselves, even though they knew it was very dangerous. How about this? Old Yuan, you first see if this space leads to the starry sky outside. If so, we'll set up a long-distance teleportation formation first, and if there's any danger, we'll leave immediately. Yunxiao said slowly. Yuan Gaohan's eyes lit up and he loudly cheered, not bad. It should be like this. He sat down cross-legged in the air and began to sense his surroundings. Yunxiao, on the other hand, was staring at the demonic aura around the ancient pagoda. He could not calm down, not knowing whether it was right or wrong to do so. There it is. I can sense the power of starlight in the distance, but it's very weak. It seems to be blocked by something. I don't know if I can break through it. Yuan Gaohan was overjoyed. If we can't clean up the things that are released from inside, Yunxiao said worriedly, will we be considered to have made a big mistake? Yuan Gaohan's heart skipped a beat, but he immediately smiled and said, even if the sky falls, there will be someone tall to hold it up. What are you, a mere martial arts grandmaster, worried about? You are from the sacred zone, and the sacred zone is the leader of the world. Don't you have any sense of responsibility? Yunxiao frowned. Yuan Gaohan was stunned for a moment before his face immediately turned serious. Of course I have a sense of responsibility. Do you know how many 9th tier profound armaments can be forged from so much northern heaven frigid star iron? It could even raise the strength of the experts of the entire realm of heavenly martial arts to a higher level. I'm taking this northern heaven frigid star iron back to the sacred zone. This is my responsibility. As for if there really is something extraordinary inside, there will naturally be Saint Domain experts to come and clean it up. Well, forget it, let's not talk about this, Yunxiao said. Let's talk about how we're going to split the northern heaven frigid star iron. What? Distribution? Yuan Gohan's eyes bulged as he called out in a strange voice, don't tell me you still want this northern heaven frigid star iron? Yunxiao's mouth was wide open as he stared at him for a while and said, there's nothing to talk about, you can play by yourself. I'll be leaving first.
Bye.
He turned around and was about to leave, looking for an exit alone. Yuan Gaohan hurriedly stepped forward and stopped him, wait, weren't you talking about responsibility just now? As a saint, I now order you to cooperate with me in collecting the northern heaven frigid star medal. It is your duty. Yunxiao looked at him as if he were a fool and said with disdain, Dumbo, dumbass, did you freeze your brain when you saw the northern heaven frigid star iron? Yuan Gaohan flew into a rage. He was really scared to be left here alone. Whether it was to collect the northern heaven cold star iron or to set up a teleportation escape formation, he needed someone to cooperate with him. He said coldly, now that you don't have the soul-devouring banner, your strength is greatly weakened. You still dare to challenge me like this? It's useless if it's gone, Yunxiao said. I picked it up. Hey, you're not a disciple of the Soul Devourer sect? Yuan Gohan's mouth was wide open, and he felt a little dizzy. Under the tyrannical power of the soul-devouring banner, he had been tricked into using the Starlight Soul refining technique and the profound meaning of 3 ancient scriptures. Now, he was actually saying that the soul-devouring banner was picked up by someone. Yunxiao rolled his eyes at him and said, I'm just a martial grandmaster. How can I refine a 9th tier soul-devouring banner? And you're a 9th tier alchemist? In the past, I thought you were a fool because you were wise, but now I know you're really stupid. Which force are you a disciple of? Yuan Gaohan asked. I'll tell you so that you'll remember it, Yunxiao said. Then, when you go back, you'll come to me with the people from the sacred zone to settle the score with me. Yuan Gaohan. Alright, you can go and get the northern heaven frigid star iron yourself. My mother is calling me home for dinner. Yunxiao waved
Goodbye
to him and flew straight into the distance. Yuan Gaohan was dumbfounded on the spot and hurriedly chased after him, don't go. I'll give you one. Yunxiao stopped, looked at him coldly, and snorted. You're giving me one of the 7? Yuan Gaohan suppressed his anger and gritted his teeth, don't tell me you want to split it with me? You have to know that this northern heaven cold star iron is the world's wealth, and we can't take it for ourselves.
Bye.
Yunxiao interrupted him and flew away, not bothering to pay him any attention. Yuan Gaohan only felt like vomiting blood, but he was a spirit body and really couldn't do it. His head was a little dizzy, so he gritted his teeth and said, good. 3-4, 3-4. Yunxiao stopped and sneered, old Yuan, we're all smart people. I hope you won't act dumb in front of me in the future, or I'll look down on you. You coward. Yuan Gaohan was truly quite angry, but he was helpless. The two of them then separated to a spot 100 meters away from the ancient tower and began to set up the instant teleportation formation. This kind of formation consumed a lot of primordial stones, and the requirements for the person who set up the formation were extremely high. But for Yuan Gaohan, it was naturally not a problem. With his current soul power of an 8th tier alchemist and the knowledge of 2 9th tier alchemists, he could quickly complete the arrangement. This made Yuan Gaohan feel an inexplicable panic about Yunxiao's strength. In some details, the other party's observation and technique were even better than his, which made him feel a great sense of frustration. Moreover, he was even more shocked to find out that this was happening to a teenager than to see the ancient pagoda.
Yeah.
Why are you staring at me? After the array was set up, Yunxiao looked at Yuan Gohan's embarrassed face. It suddenly occurred to me that if this ancient pagoda were to suppress someone, it should be suppressing a monster like you. Yuan Gaohan said. Yunxiao. The two of them slowly gathered their thoughts and flew back to the surroundings of the ancient tower. They began to carefully observe the 7 pieces of northern heaven frigid star iron. Since such a treasure was used as the seal's eye, the seal was definitely not weak. Even if it had experienced countless years, it could not be underestimated. Yunxiao gently pointed forward, and a beam of light shot out from his fingertip. The patterns on the 7 stone pillars flickered, and an invisible defense immediately appeared, blocking him and making him disappear. Don't move! Yuan Gaohan angrily shouted. You'll get me killed if you do this. There's no need to look at it, Yunxiao said. These 7 pillars form a strange formation. Although it is simple, it is very practical and does not require any primordial qi, because no matter how much primordial qi you have, it will be exhausted one day. But, these 7 huge pieces of northern heaven frigid star iron can support you for countless years, until the ancient tower and the things inside it are destroyed. Yuan Gaohan was taken aback, and after looking at it carefully for a while, a look of horror appeared on his face. It was known that every alchemist was a master of arrays, and if he was not as good as this young man in the field of arrays, it would be really terrifying. But the reality in front of him was just that terrifying. Let's begin. Since it's a Zhang Qi formation, it shouldn't be hard to break it. Yunxiao was fully prepared and said, leave immediately after you're done with the 7 pillars. Yuan Gaohan nodded solemnly, and the two of them immediately stood on either side of the ancient pagoda, raising their strength to the maximum. Let's start. Yunxiao gave a loud cry as he circulated his soul power to the maximum and performed the Great Expansion Divine Technique in his hand, immediately slapping it on the 3 northern heaven cold star iron next to him. Yuan Gaohan was in front of him and was blocked by the ancient pagoda, so he naturally couldn't see his skill. He also used a powerful soul technique to sweep away the 4 pillars. Under the combined attack of the two, the 7 pieces of northern heaven cold star iron finally began to shake violently. Demonic dragon, immediately merge with me. Staring at the northern heaven cold star iron that was slowly being pulled out of the ground, Yunxiao immediately sent a voice transmission to the dragon, and there seemed to be a hint of urgency in his tone. The demonic dragon was cultivating with his eyes closed. He opened his eyes in surprise and asked, "What's wrong?" "There's nothing unusual. Your soul power should be enough to collect these 3 pieces of northern heaven frigid star iron. After all, soul fusion was not a good thing. If it happened too many times, it would be more difficult to separate them in the future." Yunxiao's eyes flickered as he said anxiously, "Don't ask so much. I feel that something is very wrong. These 7 pieces of northern heaven frigid star iron seem to be contaminated with demonic qi, which makes me very uneasy." The demon dragon was taken aback, but without a word, it immediately merged into Yunxiao's soul and began to demonize him. With the fusion of the souls, he also felt the restless demonic qi, and his heart was bewildered. On the other side, Yuan Gaohan did not have much reaction. Because of the ancient tower, he could not see Yunxiao's demonized appearance. Instead, he was concentrating on collecting the 4 pillars, and he was constantly thinking about how to snatch the 3 pillars from Yunxiao after they escaped. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The 3 chains on Yunxiao's side were pulled out in an instant and shot up, causing the chain to clang and sway in the sky. Yuan Gaohan was shocked. How could he be so fast? The 3 pillars soared into the sky, pulling the 4 pillars on his side and shaking them. Yuan Gaohan exclaimed, "This chain is also not made of ordinary materials. I'm afraid it's not easy to repair." Clang. Before he could finish, he heard the sound of the chain breaking. Yunxiao had actually broken it by force, and 3 pieces of northern heaven frigid star iron floated into the sky. Why is this so easily broken? Yuan Gaohan was startled, feeling an indescribable strangeness. His eyes fell on the iron chain, and it was indeed a 9th-tier material without a doubt. There was even a black light on it, giving off a kind of cold feeling. He looked up and saw Yunxiao walking toward the teleportation array with the 3 pieces of northern heaven cold star iron. His pupils constricted as he immediately noticed the signs of demonization on Yunxiao's body. You still dare to lie to me that you're not a disciple of the Soul Devourer sect? If this isn't a soul battle technique, what is it? Yuan Gaohan also casually waved his hand, and the 4 pillars, which had long been swaying, immediately shot up into the sky with a pull of his powerful soul power. Moreover, the chains binding the 4 pillars in the middle broke off on their own in the process of shooting up into the sky. The crisp sound of the chain breaking rang in Yuan Gaohan's heart, and suddenly, he understood something. Looking at the broken chain, he suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air and felt a chill run down his spine. It's actually corroded by the demonic qi. He suddenly felt as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. He looked up at the ancient pagoda in horror and saw that the devil qi that was constantly surging out seemed to have changed and stopped. However, this was only the calm before the storm. The demonic qi stopped for a few seconds, and the ancient pagoda began to shake violently. Yellow sand was swept up, the earth shook, and the mountains shook. The sky suddenly darkened, and layers of dark clouds gathered and rolled. Yuan Gaohan was so frightened that he hurriedly rushed up, using his soul power to wrap around the 4 pieces of northern heaven frigid star iron and quickly traveling through the air. The demonic qi that could corrode 9th-tier materials and cause such a huge phenomenon, the thing inside definitely wouldn't be simple. This time, it was really something incredible. When he saw that Yunxiao had already arrived at the teleportation array, he shouted angrily from a distance, "Did you already see through it? You didn't even inform me." Yunxiao had already put the 3 pillars into the Divine Realm tablet and snorted coldly, "Would you give up if I told you? Stop talking nonsense, I don't have time to wait for you, I'll be leaving first." After he finished speaking, he quickly cast a spell and started to activate the teleportation formation. Yuan Gaohan was shocked and flew with all his might, almost burning his soul to sprint. In a few blinks of the eye, he landed in the teleportation array. If Yunxiao was teleported away alone, he would be finished. After entering the formation, his eyes were burning with anger. Yunxiao ignored his emotions and quickly activated the array. The feeling he got from this place was getting worse. The ancient tower in the distance was shaking too hard, and demonic qi kept rushing out and condensing in the sky. This scene was almost exactly the same as the divine palace on Mount Meru. What's going on? Suddenly, Yunxiao's heart jolted as he looked at the formation around him in horror. It had begun to twist, and the golden light was flickering. The space trembled as the ancient pagoda shook. Not good, the spatial passageway created by the formation is about to collapse. Let's go. Yuan Gaohan let out a roar of shock and quickly formed a seal into the array, increasing its speed. The space here had always been extremely stable. He didn't think that the ancient tower would become so fragile when something happened. Boom, boom, boom. The ancient pagoda shook violently and finally couldn't hold on any longer. It exploded. An extremely powerful force spread out from the ancient tower, and the space shattered inch by inch. It fluttered like paper and was finally annihilated. With a flash, the array where Yunxiao and Yuan Gaohan were located shrank into a spot of light in an instant, then disappeared from the space with the 2 of them, teleporting into the distance. The place where they had been standing was instantly shattered. The 2 of them felt an unusual pressure in the light. The power of teleportation was extremely harmful to their bodies, but it was not to the extent that they could not bear it. Moreover, the 2 of them had already calculated the distance when they set up the formation, but this time, they clearly felt that it was about to collapse. What's going on? Why is the pressure so great? You're asking me, but who should I ask? You have an 8th level Starlight Soul body. Did you do anything to the formation? Be your sister. I'm about to break down. If you die, your main body will still be there, but if I die, I'll be completely dead.
Oh no.
It's a spatial storm that's coming. As the 2 of them communicated with their divine sense, they had already covered a distance of several miles. The impact of the collapse of the ancient pagoda had caused the entire space to collapse, sweeping in all directions. At this moment, the crocodile that was sleeping on the ruins suddenly opened its eyes. Its limbs kept shaking, and its head shook. It even raised its head and roared towards the sky. Its eyes were filled with pain, and its body grew rapidly. Bang! With a huge explosion, its entire body exploded, turning into countless sharp squalls that spread across the ruins. Within the astral winds, a large amount of black gushed out. It was actually the endless void that was expanding. A beam of light shot out from the black void. It instantly pierced through the power of the astral winds and shot thousands of meters away. The two figures separated from the light and rolled in the air in a sorry state. They were Yunxiao and Yuan Gaohan. One of them had a pale face and his skin was torn apart, looking terrible. The other one was dim and wavering, like a dying star that was about to fall at any moment. The two of them looked at the ruins in the distance in horror. They had been completely swept into the astral wind. A large amount of black demonic chi seeped out of the huge astral wind and slowly condensed into a completely black, faceless human form. It stood quietly on the ground. As expected, it's suppressing a great demon. Looking at his appearance, it seems that he doesn't have enough strength, Yuan Gaohan said in horror. He can't even form his true body in a short time. The demonic chi on the demon's face was constantly changing. All kinds of faces flashed by, unable to be fixed. At this time, the violent astral wind gradually shrank and became smaller. It turned back into the crocodile, which lay on the ground and stared at the demon with a fierce look. Its eyes were full of hatred and hostility. Gulp. Yunxiao suddenly gulped, feeling a dryness in his throat. The demon's appearance was finally taking shape. What terrified him was that it looked exactly the same as Dijia. The only difference was that this demon was stronger, taller, and the evil aura on its face was even more intense. Old Yuan, did the records of the sanctum ever mention that the people of the devil race all look the same? Why did he ask this? I don't think so, how could there be such a thing? Then, if you see two demons that look the same, but one is taller and stronger, will they be twins? I really don't know. Why are you asking about these strange things? Yuan Gaohan's eyes bulged as he looked at the stars around him and worriedly said, what you should be thinking about now is how to get back. This is the ancient baron's land, a vast starry sky. Is there a way back? No. Yunxiao shook his head and said, you didn't leave a backup plan when you came up, did you? I've already calculated the time, Yuan Gaohan said with a bitter smile. I'm planning to send some 9 heavens experts to pick me up once the time is up, and then directly cross the Milky Way and return. Yunxiao's heart went numb when he thought of the terrifying energy wreaking havoc in the Milky Way that spanned the starry sky. Now that he had lost Noah's ship, he really had no idea how to return to the Earth. The great demon in the distance seemed to have gradually stabilized. He looked around and saw the connected primordial ruins. He was stunned and tilted his head in deep thought. The crocodile did not move. It stared at him with fear in its eyes. How long have I been locked up? The demon suddenly asked. His voice was not loud, but it echoed under the starry sky and clearly entered Yunxiao and Yuan Gaohan's ears. The two men's faces changed, and they quickly retreated in shock. The demon was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect the two of them to react like this. A sinister smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He stretched out his hand and grabbed in the air. Suddenly, the space in the sky kept shrinking 2 inches, like a piece of cloth being pulled. No matter how far Yunxiao and Yuan Gaohan flew, they were being pushed back. Earth-shrinking technique, so close yet worlds apart. Yunxiao was horrified as he watched himself being sent flying back to the ruins of the ancient barons, his heart sinking. He was greedy for that 9th-tier material. As expected, something big had happened. Yuan Gaohan had the same thought as him. The two of them were like 2 small boats in the waves, unable to control themselves, allowing the wind and rain to beat them. Under the demon's grasp, they fell into the ancient desolate land. Roar! Just as the two of them were falling into the ancient desolate land, the crocodile suddenly moved. It roared and charged at the demon.